The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with sounds that would have seemed strange to human ears. Clicking, humming, and chirping voices mixed together as hundreds of alien beings talked among themselves. A massive chamber stretched for miles in every direction, with floating platforms holding representatives from across the galaxy. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Zexter from the Vortani Empire. His blue skin shimmered under the artificial lights, and his 6 eyes moved independently as he looked around the room. In his 4 hands, he held a small device that projected images into the air above the crowd. The image showed a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. To most beings in the galaxy, it looked completely ordinary. Nothing special about it at all. "My fellow council members," Zexter began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber thanks to the translation. "Systems built into every wall. Today I bring you news of the most amusing discovery our scouts have made in centuries." The crowd quieted down, curious about what could be so funny. Zexter smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "This little world has produced a species that has somehow managed to build ships capable of faster than light travel. They call themselves humans, and their planet is named Earth." A wave of surprised sounds filled the hall. Several alien representatives leaned forward on their platforms, interested despite themselves. "Now, I know what you're thinking," Zexter continued. "How remarkable that another species has joined us among the stars. But here's the truly hilarious part. They have no idea how their own technology actually works." The crowd erupted in laughter. The Etherians, who looked like living crystals, made chiming sounds that rang like bells. The Nebulans, beings made of colored gas, swirled in patterns that showed their amusement. Even the Sirius hegemony representatives let out deep rumbling sounds that passed for laughter among their kind. High Chancellor Mordak raised one of his thick tentacles to get attention. His species had been exploring space for over 50,000 years, and he had seen many new civilizations rise and fall. "Ambassador Zexter," he said in his slow, deep voice, "surely you exaggerate. No species has ever achieved faster than light travel without first mastering the basic principles of reality manipulation. It's simply impossible." "I assure you, Chancellor, I speak the truth," Zexter replied, his 6 eyes gleaming with amusement. "These humans stumbled onto quantum jump technology through what they call trial and error. They built their ships by testing one thing after another until something worked. They have no mathematical proofs, no understanding of the deeper laws that govern space and time." More laughter filled the hall. On one platform, a group of quantum manipulators shook their heads in disbelief. These beings had spent millions of years perfecting their ability to bend reality to their will. The idea that someone could build faster than light ships without understanding the fundamental nature of existence seemed ridiculous. "But wait," Zexter said, holding up a hand to quiet the crowd. "It gets even better. They actually believe that the universe operates according to fixed laws that cannot be changed. They think reality is some sort of solid, unchangeable thing that must be obeyed rather than controlled." The laughter grew so loud that the translation systems had trouble keeping up. Several council members began making gestures that, in their cultures, indicated extreme amusement. "They use terms like physics and natural laws," Zexter continued when the noise died down. "They spend enormous amounts of time and energy trying to understand these supposed rules instead of simply learning to ignore them as any civilized being would do." Ambassador Clixara from the Reality Shapers Guild stood up on her platform. Her species looked somewhat like giant spiders, but with skin that constantly shifted between different colors. "This is truly incredible," she said, her multiple mouths speaking in harmony. "Every child in civilized space learns the 7 pillars of cosmic understanding before they're old enough to leave their home world. How can an entire species achieve space travel without knowing that reality is merely a suggestion? That's exactly what makes them so entertaining, Zextha replied. Our xenobiologists believe that their planet's isolation prevented them from learning proper reality manipulation techniques. Instead, they developed this primitive belief system based on observation and experimentation. Observation, snorted Council Member Vorthek from his floating chair. His gas giant-sized body needed special equipment to attend meetings in person. As if watching something happen could tell you anything useful about how reality actually works. And experimentation, added another voice from the crowd. Imagine trying to understand the universe by poking at it with primitive instruments, instead of simply reshaping it to see what happens. The mockery continued for nearly an hour. Council members shared stories of other primitive species they had encountered over the millennia. Some had been uplifted to civilization. Others had destroyed themselves before learning proper reality manipulation. None had been as amusing as these humans. Meanwhile, far from the council chambers, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human ship New Horizons. The ship wasn't much to look at compared to the massive alien vessels they had encountered. It was built from steel and ceramic composites, powered by fusion reactors that the aliens considered laughably primitive. But it worked. And more importantly, every human aboard understood exactly how it worked and why. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Ryan Clark from his station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're inviting us to attend what they call an educational demonstration." Jake looked at the message on his screen. The tone was condescending, like adults talking to children. The aliens had been treating humanity this way ever since first contact 3 months ago. Earth had been granted provisional observer status in the Council, which basically meant they were allowed to watch, but not participate in any important decisions. "They want to show us proper technology," reported Chief Science Officer Dr. Lisa Hampton from her station. "Something about demonstrating reality manipulation techniques that every civilized species should know." Jake nodded slowly. The aliens had made it clear that they considered human technology primitive and backwards. They seemed to find it funny that humans had managed to build working faster than light drives without understanding what they called the fundamental principles of existence. "Set course for the demonstration coordinates," Jake ordered. "And Lisa, keep all sensors recording. I want to study everything they show us." "Aye, Captain," she replied. As the New Horizons began its journey to the meeting point, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens were missing something important. Yes, human technology looked primitive compared to theirs, but it worked reliably, could be repaired by any trained engineer, and was built using principles that could be taught to anyone willing to learn. The aliens seemed to think this was a weakness. Jake was beginning to suspect it might actually be humanity's greatest strength. 6 months had passed since the humans first arrived at the Galactic Council, and the mockery had only gotten worse. Every day brought new insults disguised as helpful advice. The aliens gave humanity the most boring jobs they could think of. Mapping empty space systems where nothing lived. Counting space rocks floating between stars. Fixing old communication satellites that nobody else wanted to deal with. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his small office aboard the New Horizons, reading through another stack of dismissive messages from various alien species. The Council had created something called the Human Observation Protocol. It was supposed to help humans learn proper civilization, but it felt more like being treated as zoo animals. The door to his office opened without a knock. Dr. Lisa Hampton walked in, carrying a data pad and looking more excited than Jake had seen her in months. Her hair was messy, and she had the tired look of someone who had been working for days without much sleep. "Jake, you need to see this right now," she said, practically bouncing on her feet as she placed the data pad on his desk. I've been studying the recordings from their technology demonstrations, the ones where they show off their reality-bending abilities. Jake looked up from his paperwork. And what did you find? They're faking it, Lisa said with a huge grin. Well, not exactly faking it, but they're not doing what they claim to be doing. What do you mean? Lisa activated the datapad, and a complex holographic display appeared above Jake's desk. It showed waves and patterns that looked like nothing Jake had ever seen before. Remember when the Vortani made their ship disappear last month? They claimed they were shifting it out of phase with reality itself. But look at these quantum signatures. I recorded. She pointed to specific parts of the display. They're not actually changing reality. They're using incredibly advanced technology to create tiny bubbles of space where different physical rules apply. It's like creating a pocket of space where gravity works backwards, or where light bends in impossible ways. Jake leaned back in his chair, trying to understand what she was telling him. So they're not actually bending reality? Exactly. They're using technology so advanced that it looks like magic, but it's still just technology. Very, very complicated. Technology that works by creating localized fields where physics behaves differently. But how does that help us? Lisa's grin got even wider. Because while they were learning to create these reality bubbles, we were doing something completely different. We were learning to understand why reality works the way it does in the first place. She pulled up another display, this one showing mathematical equations that filled the air around them. Every human scientist, every engineer, every researcher has spent their entire career asking the same basic question. Why do things work the way they do? Not how can we make them work differently, but why do they work at all? Jake studied the equations floating in front of him. He wasn't a scientist, but he could see the beauty in the mathematical relationships Lisa was showing him. The aliens think our trial and error approach is primitive, Lisa continued. They mock us for believing in natural laws and physical constants. But that's exactly what makes us different. We don't just accept that something works. We question it, we test it, we push it to see what happens. And that's an advantage? It's the biggest advantage imaginable. While they learn to force reality into new shapes, we learn to understand the fundamental structure of existence itself. And understanding is always more powerful than manipulation. Over the next several weeks, Lisa worked with human scientists spread across multiple ships throughout the galaxy. They communicated through quantum entanglement networks, sharing data and theories faster than light could travel. The aliens didn't pay attention to these communications. As far as they were concerned, humans were still fumbling around with primitive science. The breakthrough came when engineer Paul Rodriguez, working aboard the research vessel Discovery, managed to create what they called a resonance field. Instead of trying to force space and time to behave differently, Paul had found a way to work with the underlying structure of reality itself. It's like the difference between breaking down a door and finding the right key, Paul explained during a video conference with the other research teams. The aliens are incredibly good at breaking down doors. But we found the key that was there all along. The resonance field didn't look like much. It was just a small area of space about the size of a basketball, where the quantum foam that underlies all existence seemed to hum with a gentle vibration. But when Paul ran tests on it, the results were extraordinary. Matter placed within the field became more stable. Energy flowed more efficiently. Even time itself seemed to move with greater precision. It was as if the universe was happy to have someone finally understand how it really wanted to work. Doctor Hampton was the first to understand the full implications of what they had discovered. We're not bending reality, she explained to Jake during one of their regular meetings. We're convincing it to cooperate with us. There's a huge difference. How so? The aliens use brute force. They create these reality bubbles by overwhelming the natural order with raw power. It works, but it's inefficient and unstable. Our approach is completely different. We're asking the universe to help us instead of forcing it to obey us. Jake thought about this for a moment. It sounds almost like you're saying the universe has feelings. In a way, maybe it does. Or at least it has. Preferences. Think about it this way. Every natural law, every physical constant, every fundamental force seems to be precisely tuned to create the most elegant, most beautiful possible universe. What if that's not an accident? The implications were staggering. If Lisa was right, then the universe itself was actively trying to become more beautiful, more elegant, more perfect. And humans, with their obsession with understanding why things worked, had accidentally learned to help it achieve that goal. They kept their discovery secret from the aliens. As far as the Galactic Council knew, humans were still struggling with basic concepts of space travel. The various species continued to assign them menial tasks and offer condescending advice about proper civilization. But in hidden laboratories aboard human ships scattered across the galaxy, scientists were learning to speak the universe's own language. They were discovering that reality wasn't something to be conquered or controlled. It was something to be understood and befriended. And the universe, it seemed, had been waiting a very long time for someone to finally understand what it was trying to accomplish. The invitation came on a Tuesday morning, delivered with the same condescending tone that had become familiar to every human in the galaxy. The message appeared on Captain Jake Morrison's screen as he drank his morning coffee aboard the New Horizons. The Galactic Council cordially invites human observers to attend this week's educational demonstration, the message read. Today's lesson will be presented by the Quantum Manipulators Guild, who will demonstrate the ultimate expression of reality control for the benefit of our newest and most primitive members. Jake shared the message with Dr. Lisa Hampton, who had been working almost non-stop for the past month. Her team had made incredible progress with their resonance field technology, but they had kept everything secret from the aliens. They want to show us the complete restructuring of matter and energy at the subatomic level, Lisa said, reading through the invitation details. Apparently, this is supposed to be the most advanced reality manipulation technique in the galaxy. Are you ready? Jake asked quietly. Lisa nodded, patting the small device clipped to her belt. We've run every test we can think of. The resonance generator is stable, and we've practiced the demonstration dozens of times. The central chamber of the council station was enormous, easily the size of a small city. Thousands of alien representatives had gathered to watch the demonstration. Floating platforms held beings from hundreds of different species, all eager to see the humans embarrass themselves again. Jake stood with the other human observers in a special section marked Primitive. Species observation only. The sign was written in the common galactic language, and while it was meant to be helpful, it felt more like a warning label on a zoo exhibit. Lord Vexthul of the Quantum Manipulators Guild stood at the center of the chamber. His species looked like tall, thin humans, but their skin constantly shifted between different colors and patterns. They were considered the masters of reality manipulation, capable of feats that other species could only dream of. Today, Lord Vexthul announced, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber, we will demonstrate why the Quantum Manipulators Guild has been the leading authority on reality control for over 2 million years. The crowd murmured with approval. Even other advanced species were impressed by the quantum manipulators' abilities. We will show these new humans the difference between their primitive understanding of fixed natural laws and the true mastery of existence itself. Vexthul continued. Perhaps they will finally understand why their approach to science is so laughably backward. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Around him, other human observers maintained the same carefully blank faces they had learned to wear during these demonstrations. Vexthul and his team began their work. The air in the center of the chamber started to shimmer and bend. Space itself seemed to twist into impossible shapes as the quantum manipulators created a localized zone where the electromagnetic force was hundreds of times stronger than normal. Within this twisted space, they began to build structures that hurt to look at directly. Matter arranged itself in patterns that shouldn't exist, glowing with colors that had no names in any language. The electromagnetic field was so intense that it created new forms of matter that existed only within the artificial reality bubble. "Behold," Lord Vexthul called out, his voice filled with pride, "the ultimate triumph of intelligence over the illusion of natural law. We have created matter that obeys our will rather than the primitive constants your species worships." The assembled aliens made sounds of appreciation. Clicking, humming, and chirping filled the chamber as thousands of beings expressed their admiration for the display. "This is what true civilization looks like," Vexthul continued. "Not the stumbling experiments of species who think the universe has rules that cannot be broken, but the confident mastery of those who understand that reality is whatever we choose to make it." More sounds of approval echoed through the chamber. Jake noticed that many of the aliens were looking toward the human section, clearly expecting to see expressions of awe and confusion. Instead, Jake stepped forward. "Very impressive," he said, loudly enough for his voice to carry through the chamber's amplification systems. "We humans have been working on something similar, though I'm sure our primitive efforts can't compare to your advanced techniques." The chamber fell silent. Thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs focused on the small group of humans. Several council members exchanged what looked like amused gestures. "By all means," High Chancellor Mordak said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. "Show us what you have learned. We are always eager to see how developing species attempt to copy proper civilization." Dr. Hampton stepped forward and activated the small device on her belt. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The chamber remained silent, with aliens waiting to see what kind of crude imitation the humans would produce. Then, slowly, something began to change. It started as a vibration so low that most species couldn't detect it at first. But gradually, the frequency grew stronger, and every being in the chamber began to feel something they had never experienced before. The universe was singing. It wasn't a sound that could be heard with ears. It was a resonance that touched the fundamental structure of reality itself. The quantum foam that underlies all existence began to hum with a harmony that seemed to make everything in the chamber more real, more present, more perfect. The aliens stopped making their sounds of amusement. Many began to look around in confusion, trying to understand what was happening. Dr. Hampton held out her hand, and a small flower began to materialize in her palm. But this wasn't the crude matter restructuring that the quantum manipulators had demonstrated. This flower existed in perfect harmony with every force around it. It was more real than anything else in the chamber, more beautiful than anything the aliens had ever seen. "We call it resonance physics," Dr. Hampton explained calmly, even as the flower began to grow and spread. Its roots extended into dimensions that the aliens couldn't perceive. Its petals shimmered with colors that seemed to contain all other colors within them. "We discovered that reality doesn't need to be forced into new shapes," she continued. "It wants to be beautiful. It wants to be elegant. It wants to be perfect. You just have to learn how to ask it politely." The chamber began to fill with impossible gardens. Plants that existed in 7 dimensions sprouted from the floor and walls. Flowers bloomed in colors beyond any spectrum. Trees grew whose branches stretched through folded space to touch distant stars. And through it all, the humans stood calmly, conducting a symphony of existence itself. The aliens watched in stunned silence as their entire understanding of reality was turned upside down. They had spent millions of years learning to force the universe into new shapes, never realizing that they could simply ask it to be beautiful instead. The demonstration lasted only 10 minutes, but it changed everything. When the resonance field finally faded and the impossible gardens disappeared, the chamber remained silent for a long time. Finally, Lord Vixthul spoke, his voice much quieter than before. "How?" he asked, simply. Dr. Hampton smiled. "We listened," she said. "While you were learning to make reality obey you, we were learning to understand what it was trying to tell us. And it turns out the universe has been trying to become more beautiful for billions of years. It just needed someone to help." 6 months after what everyone now called the Great Demonstration, the galaxy had completely changed. The same aliens who had spent years mocking humanity now competed desperately to get their attention. Every day brought new offers of friendship, alliance, and trade agreements. Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his new office aboard the orbital station Harmony, which floated peacefully in the space between Earth and Mars. The station itself was humanity's first major gift to the galaxy, built entirely using resonance physics. It existed in perfect balance with the forces around it, drawing its power from the fundamental harmony of space itself. The station was beautiful in ways that were hard to describe. Its walls seemed to glow with soft inner light, and walking through its corridors felt like being inside a piece of living music. Alien visitors often said that just being near Harmony made them feel more peaceful and content than they had in centuries. The Vortani Empire has submitted another request for technological exchange. His aide, Commander Amy Foster, reported as she entered his office. "They're offering us complete access to their dark matter manufacturing facilities in exchange for just one small resonance field generator." Jake smiled and shook his head. 6 months ago, they wouldn't trust us to clean their garbage disposal units. Now they want to trade their most advanced technology for something we built in Lisa's lab. And the Hegemony Council? They've offered us full membership in the Inner Circle, complete voting rights on all galactic decisions, plus a permanent seat on the High Command. They're even willing to make humans the senior partners in a new galactic alliance. Through the large window of his office, Jake could see the busy traffic patterns around Harmony Station. Ships from hundreds of different species came and went every day, but now they moved differently. The space around the station seemed to teach them to fly more smoothly, more gracefully, as if the resonance fields were helping them become more than they were before. The door chimed, and Dr. Lisa Hampton entered, carrying her usual armload of data pads and looking tired but happy. She had been promoted to Chief Science Advisor for all human space operations, and she spent her days traveling between star systems, establishing new resonance zones wherever humans went. "Jake, we've had another breakthrough," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "The resonance field generators are working better than our wildest dreams. We've successfully established harmony zones around 15 different star systems now. And the effects? Incredible. Worlds that have been dead for millions of years are starting to grow life again. Old stars that were burning out are getting brighter and healthier. Even the space between planets is becoming more beautiful." She activated one of her datapads, showing him recordings from the most recent installations. "Look at this. The Kepler system was completely barren when we arrived there last month. Nothing but rocks and dead planets. We set up a resonance network, and within 2 weeks, 3 of the planets started developing atmospheres." Jake studied the images on the screen. Where before there had been gray, lifeless worlds, now there were swirls of blue and white clouds, hints of green spreading across the surfaces. "It's like the universe is healing itself," Lisa continued. "Wherever we establish resonance fields, everything becomes more alive, more vibrant, more perfect. The aliens are calling it magic, but it's really just the cosmos becoming what it always wanted to be. And the alien species? How are they reacting to all this? Mixed reactions. Some of them are trying to copy our technology, but they don't understand the fundamental principles. They're still thinking in terms of force and control. A few species have asked us to teach them, and those are the ones making real progress. Jake nodded. In the months since the Great Demonstration, humanity had been careful about sharing their knowledge. They had learned that not every species was ready to abandon their old ways of thinking about reality. Lisa, I need to ask you something that's been bothering me, Jake said. When you first explained resonance physics, you said the universe wanted to be beautiful. But what does that actually mean? How can the universe want anything? Lisa set down her data pads and looked out the window at the stars. That's the question I've been working on for months now, and I think I finally have an answer. She stood up and walked to the window, placing her hand against the transparent material. Every physical law, every fundamental force, every quantum interaction follows patterns that create maximum beauty and elegance. That's not an accident. It's the whole point. The point of what? The point of existence itself. The universe has been running a billions of years long experiment, trying to find the most beautiful way for matter and energy to interact. Every galaxy, every star, every planet is part of that experiment. Jake joined her at the window, and we figured that out. We were the first species to ask the right questions. Instead of trying to dominate reality, we tried to understand it. And when we did, we discovered that the universe has been waiting for partners, not masters. As they watched, a small human ship departed from the station, its hull glowing with air, the soft resonance field that had become the signature of human technology. Jake knew that ship was heading to a distant galaxy, carrying scientists who would establish new harmony zones and help the universe continue its great work of becoming more beautiful. What happens now? Jake asked. Now we keep listening. We keep learning. And we help the universe become everything it's always dreamed of being. Outside the window, something amazing happened. A new star appeared in the distance, not born from collapsing gas and dust like normal stars, but created from the pure joy of a universe that finally felt understood. The light from this newborn star reached across space to touch the station, and for a moment, both Jake and Lisa could swear they heard the cosmos humming with contentment. The mockery was over. The real work was just beginning. Other human ships were spreading across the galaxy, each one carrying resonance field generators and scientists who understood the true nature of reality. Wherever they went, dead worlds bloomed with life. Old stars grew young again, and the fabric of space itself seemed to sing with happiness. The aliens who had once laughed at humanity's primitive science now begged to learn from them. Some species, the ones willing to abandon their old ways of thinking, were beginning to understand. Others, too proud to admit they had been wrong, continued to struggle with their outdated reality manipulation techniques. But the universe didn't care about alien pride. It cared about beauty, about elegance, about the slow, patient work of becoming perfect. And humanity, with their endless curiosity and their willingness to listen, had become its most trusted partners in that great cosmic project. As Jake watched the traffic around Harmony Station, he realized that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was full of dead worlds waiting to live again, dying stars that could be renewed, and empty space that could be filled with wonders beyond imagination. The universe had spent eternity waiting for someone to help it become beautiful. Now, finally, it had found the right partners for the job.